bulletin?
Typically, I would be discussing it for a week.
I'm sorry, Sergeant. Not typically. How many times did you discuss this?
For this particular safety alert, I was there for 4 days throughout that week. So I would discuss it each and every day I was there, so for 4 days.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
Cross-examination, Mr. McMahon.
Good morning, Sergeant Shield.
Good morning, sir.
Prior to talking about this officer safety alert this morning, did you have any specific recollection of this officer safety alert that I think you said was published December of 2012, so almost 6 years ago?
I'm not sure I understand your question,
Sure,
sir.
that's my fault. Sorry. You said this officer safety alert came out in December of 2012, correct?
Yes, sir.
We're now almost 6 years later.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any specific recollection of discussing this officer safety alert during roll call between December 4 and December 8, 2012?
And now, sir?
And today, yes.
No, sir.
You've been a Chicago police officer for 27 years, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Have you personally ever recovered a knife gun or revolver gun from the streets of Chicago?
I have not, sir.
Do you have personal knowledge of any other Chicago police officer recovering a knife gun from the streets of the city of Chicago at any time during your 27 years?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
Yes, Sergeant, this is an important alert, correct?
Yes, ma'am. All officer safety alerts are important. If it wasn't important, we wouldn't put it out as an alert.
And it was important to notify the police officers of the seriousness of this particular gun knife.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know.
Mr. McMahon?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. You can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Could I have the attorneys over here for scheduling, please?
And I worked at a different facility in April 2014.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I worked at Cook County Detention Center in 2014.
And were you at the Juvenile Detention Center on April 22nd, 2014?
Yes.
All right. And what were your duties and responsibilities on April 22nd, 2014?
I was the assistant team leader.
What does the assistant team leader do?
I was responsible, middle management, supervisor of about 32 staff, about 50 youth.
All right. And I want to call your attention to around 7:30 p.m. on April 22nd, 2014. You were working then, correct?
Correct.
All right. And did you receive a call to go to Pod 40?
Pod 4.
Pod 4?
Pod 4G.
Okay, 4G. Mm-hmm. You received a call to go there?
Yes.
All right. What was the call?
One of the staff members called me over due to an incident that occurred on the unit.
I'm sorry?
An incident occurred on the unit,
All
and
right.
the staff called me over.
So
Ma'am,
you
pull your
went-
chair up a little bit, speak into the mic. Thank you.
So you responded to a call for an incident, correct?
Correct.
All right. And did you get there?
Yes.
And when you got there, did somebody tell you what the incident was all about?
Yes.
All right. What did they tell you?
Sustain.
It's not for the truth of the matter, sir, Judge. It's just what
Move
you
on.
knew.
Sustain.
All right. And at that point in time, did you have occasion to see or meet with Laquan McDonald?
Yes.
Where was Laquan McDonald when you met with him?
During this incident, I can't recall.
All right. Is there anything that would refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And would that be a report you wrote on that incident?
Yes.
13?
12. 13. I'm sorry, defense number 13.
Defense 14.
All right, we'll change it to 14 then.
You approach your leads.
Go ahead.
Ms. Alexander, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense 14 for identification. Ask you to look at that. Take your time and tell us if you recognize the evidence.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection about why you were called there?
Yes.
All right. And why were you called there?
No, it's not as the conversation, but she can call, testify as to the event. Go ahead.
What was your question?
Why were you called there?
Staff called me over because Laquan McDonald refused to enter his cell.
Okay. And when you got there, was he in or out of his cell?
He was out of his cell.
And were you part of getting him back in his cell?
Yes.
All right. And once he was back in his cell, what did he do when he got back in his cell?
He began to make verbal statements, threatening the other youth who were on the unit, telling them that he would beat them up if they stepped into their cell if they followed any of the staff directives.
Did he also say something about the...
You can't lead. All right.
I'm not leading, Judge. I'm asking if he said anything about the Rovers.
Sure, go ahead. That's proper.
Yes, he said that he would beat the Rovers' ass.
And who were the Rovers?
The rapid response team?
Okay. And were they on their way up, if you know?
Yes.
All right. And did he say anything about the bitch?
He mentioned fuck the TL, which is the team leader. Yeah.
Were you the team leader?
I was the assistant team leader.
All right. Did he say anything about a judge?
He did say that he wasn't really concerned about court. He'll put a slug in the judge's head.
Now, you stayed up there for about an hour, correct?
Correct.
And for an hour, was McDonald making all these threats?
I can't recall if he made the threats for an hour in its entirety.
But you were up there for an hour, right?
Correct, securing other youth.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. I don't have anything else, Judge.
Thank you. Cross-examination. Ms., please.
Thank you. Ma'am, on pod G4, how many kids were on that pod?
I can't identify exactly how many, no more than 16.
Okay. So when you got called up there that night, it wasn't just Laquan that didn't want to go back in his cell, correct?
Correct.
And if a kid goes back into their cell in the youth home, do they have TVs in their cell?
No.
Do they have activities they can do in their cell?
We try to provide activities, maybe tangible items like crossword puzzles, books, things like that.
But they have to do it by themselves, correct?
Correct.
So was Laquan McDonald in the cell by himself?
Yes.
And so when you got up there, you had a conversation with him, correct?
Yes.
And you convinced him to go into his cell?
Yes.
How long did it take you to convince him to go into his cell?
No more than 2 minutes.
Okay. And then when he's in the cell and he's making these statements, is he in the cell by himself?
Yes.
Has the door been shut?
Yes.
Is it locked?
Yes.
And so he's just yelling out the door these statements, correct?
Correct.
And so just so the jury can understand, do the doors have a window on it?
Yes.
And how is it that an individual inside can talk to people outside?
Well, there's also punctures in the door, like holes for you can hear conversation from the door. So he was just yelling through the cracks of your doors, the seams of your doors.
Okay. Is there a meal tray slot in these doors?
Yes.
Okay. So when Laquan is yelling out the door, the other kids still are outside and they need to be secured, correct?
Correct.
So you're up there trying to get all the kids to go back into their cells, right?
Correct.
And do they normally have to go to bed at 7:30 at night?
Yes.
So that's not at all unusual. It was 7:30 at night.
No.
Is it unusual that they don't want to go to bed at 7:30?
No.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
So Mr. McDonald was trying to incite his peers to tune him up, right?
That's proper language when we write it up, yes.
And that's how you wrote it up, correct?
Correct.
So he's inside his cell trying to get these guys that are not in their cell to tune him up, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Defense, call your next witness, please.
Richard Dell, please. Richard Dell.
These nominees to or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this honorable court and jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Yes. Delk, D-E-L-K.
And how are you employed, Mr. Dell?
Work for Cook County Juvenile Detention Center as a rapid response specialist.
And how long have you been at the Juvenile Justice Center?
Just under 7 years. It'll be 7 years in January.
And can you explain to the folks what the rapid response team is all about?
Well, we respond to emergencies in the building, mainly when they have situations with the residents, such as they refuse to go to their room, or if there's a fight or some type of disturbance, they'll call us and for assistance to help straighten out the disturbance.
And when you say us, how many people are on the team?
Total members on the team about 27 at this time.
And
We usually have about 8 per shift.
8 per shift?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to call your attention to April 18th, 2014. You were working at the Juvenile Justice Center then, correct?
Yes.
And were you on the rapid response team on that date?
Yes.
And were you working with 700 guys?
Yes.
Calling your attention about 9:30 in the evening. Were you called anywhere?
We were called up to, I believe it was Pod 4G for non-emergency assistance response to that unit.
All right. So you responded to 4G?
Yes.
And how many rapid response members responded?
I can't say exactly. It's probably about 6 of us went up there.
And when you got there, do you know Laquan McDonald, or did you know Laquan McDonald?
Yeah, I was familiar with him from being in the building. I didn't know him personally, but I was familiar with him.
But you knew him when you saw him, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that's from being in the building?
Yes.
And were you asked to do anything in relation to Laquan McDonald?
Well, when we got there, the staff informed us that we had some residents refusing to go to their room, and the residents were over in the TV area. So I wasn't asked to do anything specifically with Laquan McDonald, but he was one of the residents that were in the TV area that were refusing to go to their room. So just by chance, I happened to pick him and told him, "Come on, McDonald, let's go to your room."
Did he resist you going to his room?
Initially, he did not. He got up and started walking to his room, but before we arrived there, he resisted.
And was it just you and McDonald at the time?
Yeah, at that time when he initially resisted, it was just me and him.
When you say he initially resisted, what did he do?
Well, he was walking to his room, and then he turned around and started yelling "squad" to some of the other residents on the unit. And at that time, I grabbed him by the arm and told him, "Come on, let's go." And he resisted the restraining. I had to go into a restraint with him. And when he resisted, we went to the ground, and some other members came along and assisted me.
And when you say they assisted you in what?
Gaining control of him, get him handcuffed, and then helping him to his room.
So you and your partner, so to speak, got him in his room, right?
Yes.
What did you do with him when you got him in his room?
We laid him on his mattress on the bed in the prone position, which is face down on the mattress. We instructed him that we're going to remove the handcuffs and to remain still while we did so. We took off the cuffs, but when we removed the second cuff, he got up off the bed and still continued to resist us, so we had to put him back down on the bed.
When you say he started to resist you, what exactly did he do?
He tried to get up off of the bed. We instruct the residents in that situation to remain on the bed until we exit the room, and he didn't follow those instructions.
So what did you have to do?
We had to place him back on the bed again.
And it took more than one guy to do that?
That was about 3 of us.
Thank you, officer. I have nothing for you, Judge.
Cross-examination, Mr. Watt.
Police officers of all ranks in about 92 different areas of law, or different topics, I should say. I serve as an expert witness for the city in various cases. I consult other experts on various legal issues.
And how long have you been teaching law at the training academy?
Approximately 21 years.
Okay. Can I have the attorneys over at the side? Can we get to Thank you very much. All right, we're all set. All right, Mr. Herbert, will you proceed, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. How many hours of law are taught to the recruits during their training?
Right now, approximately 92.
And where does the number 92 come from? Is that an arbitrary number?
I'm sorry, establish the dates that they're teaching it, when they started teaching in 92, because if it is before your client went in there, it's not material and relevant now.
You taught at the training academy in 2004?
Yes, sir.
And currently, I believe you said that the training is 92 hours?
Yes. It was raised in the year 2017. It was 78.
Okay.
It was approximately 78 at the time.
In 2004, it would have been 78?
It would have been.
Okay. And where does that number come from?
That comes from the Illinois Training and Standards Board. We have a mandated curriculum. So it is mandated, the topics that we teach and the hours in each particular topic.
Okay. And you have lesson plans for teaching the recruits, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And it's a core curriculum, right? The same lesson plans for each hour of instruction?
Yes.
Okay. And if I can show you what I previously tendered to the state, it is Defense Exhibit number 15. And I will mention, Judge, it's a two-page exhibit. Can I approach?
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Harris, if you can look at that and tell me if you recognize what that document is.
Yes, this is part of the materials in our law handout, Part 3.
Okay, and is that a true and accurate representation of the lesson plan materials contained in Part 3 of your instruction?
Yes.
Okay.
What year? See, that was that?
Yeah, in 2004, or in that time period.
No, you're correct about the correct thing. You have to establish that it was your client that got this, otherwise it doesn't have any meaning.
Fair enough.
Yes, this is an accurate assessment. This is the statute, 720 ILCS 5/7-5, and the same statute was in effect for many, many years, including 2004, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I approach? Okay, 1 minute. My co-counsel corrected me. Jason Van Dyke was in the training academy in 2001. So the same questions I asked you about 2004, you would agree with me that these training documents apply?
The training documents as well as the number of hours.
Thank you. And Your Honor, if I can
Well,
publish...
you mentioned 2004, but you didn't mention 2001 as those documents being in effect at that time, so correct it.
Okay. The documents that I just showed you, which refer to the Peace Officer Use of Force statute, these documents were part of the lesson plan in 2001, is that correct?
That is correct.
Your Honor, at this point I'd like to publish the first page of that exhibit.
All right, go ahead.
And Ms. Harris, you see what I have, what we have just published, which is not yet published, I don't think. Okay.
Yes.
This TV's not on, Your Honor.
Take care of it.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I got an answer from you, but you recognize this document?
Yes.
And this is the training document regarding the Peace Officer Use of Force statute, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'd like
One
to...
of them.
I'm sorry?
This is one of the documents.
Great. And I think I'm going to show you the second one right here. And that's the second page of the statute in the training document, is that correct?
That's the second page of what we have in the handout.
Okay.
Yes.
And Ms. Harris, what I want to ask you now is, is there a worksheet that the recruits are required to kind of interactively fill out regarding the language in this statute?
Yes.
Okay. If I can mark the next exhibit as Defendant 16, I've given the state a copy.
Hello, 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 everyone. Pilar Arias jumping back onto the News Now set. I hope you all wished Mr. Mike Pace happy early birthday. I'll be covering for him tomorrow, Friday, Monday, here on News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. Very busy Times Square there. Take a look at that. This is an actual beautiful picture of the White House as well. I mean, look at that shading in that live picture, the dark trees and lawn, and then you see the fog in the background and the lights. Absolutely gorgeous. Please do us a favor, click that subscribe button. You can then sign up for notifications and be alerted anytime we go live with breaking news. And since we do have live feeds, not just here in the Valley of the Sun or the state of Arizona, nationwide, sometimes even worldwide, you never know when we could be in your neighborhood. Feel free to let me know where you are and what the top story of the day has been. What's everybody talking about where you live? All right, let's get caught up with some of the day's top stories and headlines I've been waiting to bring to you today, but it's been such a busy day. We haven't been able to get to them just yet. This first one I have for you is getting everybody up to speed with the Bill Cosby verdict and reaction.
Bill Cosby is behind bars today, the first celebrity sentenced to prison for sex crimes in the Me Too era.
In the eyes of this court, he's a convicted felon and shouldn't be given a pass.
32 years that I had endured finally came to a closure this week.
The 81-year-old legally blind comedian led slowly out of court in handcuffs Tuesday after his sentence of 3 to 10 years in prison for sexual assault. He'll also have to register as a sex offender and undergo counseling for the rest of his life. During his sentencing hearing, the judge ruled Cosby is a sexually violent predator.
If anything like this happens to any woman or young girl out there, come forward, tell someone. Never keep it a secret.
Cosby was convicted in April of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constand at his suburban Philadelphia home back in 2004. More than 60 women have accused the once beloved actor of sexual misconduct, but most cases were too old to prosecute, exceeding the statute of limitations. Cosby's legal team still maintains his innocence, claiming prosecutors used falsified evidence, vowing to appeal.
Mr. Cosby knows that God is watching over him. He knows that these are lies. They persecuted Jesus, and look what happened.
Cosby is expected to spend no less than 3 years in a Pennsylvania prison before he's eligible for supervised release. In New York, Rick Leventhal, Fox News.
All right, Rick, thanks for getting all of us up to date. Okay, this next story. Do you have a local diner that you go to every day, once a week? I know my parents are getting to that age where they go to this restaurant over and over again. Okay, this next story is talking about some waitresses celebrating 50 years at the same restaurant in Kansas City. Could you imagine working somewhere for 50 years? Oh, I can't wait to see this one.
It's been 50 years in the restaurant business, and no doubt you'll have some stories to tell.
This guy bit the other guy's finger off, and they had it in a French fry basket.
Jenny Russell and Betty Reed also have a rare distinction of serving up steaks at the same restaurant for 50 years.
Betty and I are like sisters. We can work together without even speaking. We're a lot alike.
Each started at Jess and Jim's in Martin City in 1968.
That's 3 generations that I've worked here. 3 generations.
Current owner Mike Van Noy was just 4 years old.
They're the last part of my childhood left, really, actually, in this building.
We used to have tablecloths, and he would mess them up and make me mad, and I'd run him back in the kitchen.
And for some customers, the best part.
5 tables a night, they'll ask for me. And that's not because I'm pretty, you know, because I'm an old lady, but they love me.
Many of the customers who've had the ladies as servers since they were kids joined Russell and Reed Monday for a celebration of their 50 years at Jess and Jim's. Each of the great-grandmothers say it hasn't always been easy, like when the restaurant made the switch from notepads to computers.
I don't have a computer and I don't have a cell phone.
Did you ever think?
Of quitting?
Yeah.
100 times.
Reed says she never planned to work 50 years.
I just had to work, so I figured I'd just work. Made a lot of money.
But says she's now nearing retirement. Russell says for now she plans on staying as long as they'll have her. She recently cut back from 4 to 3 nights a week. And her advice to those now covering her shift:
You better have a good attitude and a smile on your face.
Dave DeMarco, Fox 4 News.
You guys, that was one of the best stories I've seen in a really long time. What did you all think about that? Taking a live look now at downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Still pretty warm out there. I think we are waiting for fall to officially arrive. Okay, anybody out there like wine? Red wine, white wine, pink wine, rosé, any type of wine. This next story I have for you is about a wine label battle between California and Oregon.
This all has to do with Oregon Pinot Noir. It's known around the world. The OLCC and winemakers here in Oregon say a California company is using that reputation with what they call questionable labeling. It's that time of year. The sun's rays giving Oregon Pinot Noir grapes a last shot of sunshine before they're plucked and made into wine.
The Willamette Valley is now recognized around the world for its quality.
These grapes are world famous, and winemakers have worked for decades to build that reputation and now protect it.
Oregon wine growers have put their hearts into growing our industry and the recognition for our Willamette Valley.
So imagine seeing a label on the shelf from a California company boasting Oregon Coast Pinot Noir, or saying made from 3 different growing areas in the state.
It's an unbelievable deception.
That has winemakers like Jim Bernot with Willamette Valley Vineyards pretty upset.
What has happened is this California wine producer's come along and he's taken something that he's not entitled to. He's not entitled to use our Willamette Valley AVA name and make the wine in California.
Oregon has the strictest wine labeling laws in the country. For instance, to be considered a Willamette Valley or Rogue Valley Pinot Noir, 95% of the wine must come from grapes grown in the Willamette or Rogue Valley. You simply can't mix grapes from across the state and call it Oregon Pinot.
Oregon winemakers have been committed to what's called truth in labeling. In fact, Oregon has the most strict and toughest wine labeling laws in the country, which is one of the reasons why we're so sensitive about this.
For Bernot, he says this is just the beginning and says they'll continue to push to protect and uphold Oregon wine label standards.
It's shameful, it's illegal, and we're hoping the regulators stop it.
We did reach out to the company behind those labels for comment to get their side of the story. We have not heard back yet. Reporting in studio, John Hendricks, Fox 12 Oregon.
All right. Who knew there were such strict laws and regulations on wine labels? All right, this next story, our very own John Hook reporting about preschool toy testing being done nationwide.
We're making something cool.
Getting a child to eat their vegetables is not easy, but getting them to play with toys is.
Marbles and Daffy.
And that's exactly what these kids are doing for the entire week. They'll be playing with toys, and teachers will watch the interaction to see which toys are best and most educational.
We want toys that are not only going to just look fun, but actually teach concepts.
Goddard School in Goodyear is one of the 50 schools picked from across the country to take part in this nationwide event.
And we are a big STEM school. We love to learn through hands-on exploration. We love to get messy. So this is right in their wheelhouse. This is something that they are not going to shy away from by any means.
And even though the kids have no idea they're actually reviewing toys, the teachers are marking down which toys attract their attention and which ones don't.
We're super excited to see what our students want to promote, play with, what they're drawn to, so that we can recommend some of the best schools for playful learning.
Once the toy fun is over, kids will cast their vote on their favorite toy to determine which toys are in the top 10 for preschoolers that Santa can add to his holiday list.
I totally wish I could have been one of those kids who tested toys when I was their age. All right, this next story is about a woman being attacked by fire ants and almost dies from stings. I know I am very, very allergic to ants. I need to carry one of those emergency medical devices in case I were to ever get bit by them. So let's watch the story and find out what happened to her.
I was weed eating right through here because it had grown up so high.
The grass was so high, Donna Kearns couldn't see what was at her feet on Saturday afternoon. She ended up near a mound of fire ants.
When the weed eater hit them, they just exploded in on me. The biting started instantly. And you could tell because it's like pins going through you.
She tried to wash them off with water, but suddenly started to feel sick, then collapsed in her yard.
It was running through my mind. My husband's hard of hearing too, so I knew he had the TV up real loud. And I thought, how am I going to get to him to let him know I'm out here?
Thankfully, a stranger drove by. That woman told me she passes by this house often, and this sign always catches her eye. But this time, Donna caught her eye, passed out on the lawn.
She got my husband to the door and told her, said, I think this is your wife laying out in the yard.
Then the stranger called 911. First responders got to Donna just in time, saving her from an allergic reaction.
You can't imagine what really could have happened, but it definitely would have happened if she hadn't stopped.
Now Donna, back up and at him again, says life is all about the little things. Something as small as an ant, or a glance from the stranger in the right direction.
It was meant to be, I guess. It wasn't my time to go. And she was in the right place at the right time, and thank God she stopped, and I love her to death.
Oh man, that brings up some rough memories for myself there. I'm glad that woman was discovered by a good Samaritan who called 911, and she's gonna be okay. Well, it seems like every time we hear about millennials, it's kind of somewhat bad or negative news, right? Turns out they're being attributed to dropping the divorce rate. Let's find out why.
If you waited to get married, chances are you won't be getting a divorce. At least that's what the numbers are showing. A professor of sociology at the University of Maryland is looking into a survey conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau for the past 9 years, asking millions of Americans one simple question: did you get a divorce in the last 12 months? Professor Philip Cohen says the U.S. divorce rate has dropped 18% from when the survey started in 2008 to 2016, and says it's mainly due to the younger generation, especially women, waiting longer to tie the knot.
There might be something to it.
Women who are going to college are really trying to finish college and get their career started before they get married. They want to be more set up, more established.
I think it's better to get married when you're older. I think people don't know who they are when they're younger, and I think that it takes a lot more time to be on your own to learn who you are.
Statistically speaking, while Professor Cohen says marrying in your mid-30s reduces the possibility of divorce, not everyone agrees.
My parents married when she was 19 and he was 20, and they were married until they died. So, who knew?
I got married in my 20s, and I thought it worked out pretty well.
Still married?
Still married, yeah. Working out pretty well.
Nothing wrong with the high school sweethearts per se, but the longer you're in the field, the higher the chance you have of finding just the right person.
So what if you did meet your match when you were younger, you got married, and you're probably watching this thinking, I'm doomed? Not really the case. Now, of course, I asked that question to Professor Philip Cohen, and he says sometimes you just get lucky. I mean, after all, when you know, right? On the Upper East Side, Reagan Medji, Fox 5 News.
When you know, you know. You all may have not been able to hear me there. When you know, you know. Hands up emojis if you're willing to admit you're married. right, everyone, coming up here next on News Now, a United Nations TV broadcast called Time to Act on Global Mental Health. Just realized you may not have been able to hear me very well. Again, this is a United Nations TV segment on Time to Act on Global Mental Health, building momentum on mental health in the SDG era. That's coming up next here on News Now.
The impact. Mental health. The brain is creating pain.
I think mental health is a really scary topic.
75% get no help at all.
Some of the signs to look for include risky behavior, suicide rates have spiked.
And it's up to us to figure out which direction it is going.
It is people like you and people like me that are going to make the change today.
I would like to see actually something happening in the political world, in the business world, and of course in the world of education. What I would like to see is that we invest in time, thought, and money to make a difference.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Cynthia Germanata, and I'm president of Born This Way Foundation, which I co-founded with my daughter Stephanie, who many of you may know as Lady Gaga. I'm also ambassador for United for Global Mental Health, which we are delighted to be launching today. I'm also an ambassador for United for Global Mental Health. Mental health is a fundamental part of every human being. However, the world is experiencing an unprecedented mental health challenge. Who in this room has been personally affected by a mental health condition? So have I. I'm not just here today as the head of an organization who supports the mental health of young people, but I'm here as a mom who knows what it's like to see her children struggle. My daughter developed depression at an early age and continues to struggle with it. Our foundation is her way and our way of helping people better cope with those issues. I missed many of the warning signs, and for many reasons, including stigma, lack of understanding, and fear, and I didn't talk about it enough with either of my children. Over the years, I've learned more about mental health and the importance of asking your children how they are starting to feel at an early age. If I may be so bold as to empower you to see your children, all children, in a different way. Sometimes there are things parents don't want to see, but I encourage you to look deeper and be unafraid so you can intervene earlier. Together, we can do anything if we put our minds to it. We should collectively work toward developing programs that teach mental health awareness and the importance of kindness. My daughter's dream is to have mental health ambassadors in every school and community. My family had so many advantages, but no one is immune from this issue. Luckily, we had the resources we need to get help, but for too many families, that's just not the case. Millions of other families around the world who have been impacted by mental health are still silenced by stigma or unable to access the care or services they so desperately need. The reality is, we all have mental health. We are all affected by mental ill health. It impacts our families and communities, it burdens our economies, and it undermines progress toward vital benchmarks, including the Sustainable Development Goals. Despite those challenges, and as daunting as they can seem, there are solutions, so of which you'll hear about today. It's time to accelerate actions that we know are working and learn from each other, governments, private sector, civil society, and every one of your communities. Now it's my privilege to introduce two extraordinary youth activists, Raghu Appasani and Emma McCann, to discuss their experiences. Thank you for being here. Please join me. So, Raghu and Emma, what brought you here today?
So I've had the opportunity of working in the mental health field for many years, and from my experience, the biggest thing that I've learned is that mental illness has no boundaries. It affects the rich, it affects the poor, it affects the young, it affects the old. And I've had the opportunity to work with farmers in India, with medical students in Boston, with monks in Nepal, and everyone is affected by mental illness and mental health in one way or another. And so for me, I'm here today because this is really bringing everyone together for a united front to finally bring about change for a much-needed cause.
The reason I'm here today is I think it's so important to remember that none of the work that we're talking about here can happen without really authentically engaging the voices of those people with lived experience in mental health and addictions issues. And so I think back to my experience in my community, and when I was in high school, our community was rocked by a number of youth suicides, and there was this feeling of helplessness and this feeling of hopelessness, and more than anything, we as young people felt disempowered. We felt like we couldn't connect to our natural allies within our community and do something to make a difference. And so that's really why I'm here, is that reminder that when we empower these communities, when we help people find ways to support their friends, their peers, their families, that's when the real successes happen, and that's when we see a real difference on the ground with those experiencing mental illness and addictions issues.
Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences. We're surrounded by decision makers here today. What's the one message you want them to take away from this meeting?
Lots of messages, but I think the biggest thing is that with the rise of a lot of global conflicts, increasing suicide rates, enormous youth population and potential, the time really is now to act, and we've waited long enough. So there's already a lot of great work being done, and many people who represent that work are in this room, but many of us have worked in silos. So we really need to come together now to bring about political change, financial change, and advocacy to scale these promising interventions that are already in place.
I'd like to remind folks in this room that there's so much power in what's happening in this space and bringing together so many leaders within the field of mental health globally. But also, there's so much power in what's happening at the community level. And when we mobilize our communities and when we empower our communities and when we provide the resources that people need to make change within their community, that's when we're going to see real change.
Thank you again, and I'd like to officially turn it over to Raghu and Emma to share a little bit with you about the schedule for the afternoon and the panels for the afternoon.
Thank you. So I'm really excited for this. I feel like I've been waiting my entire life for a united front for mental health. And we all know that the world is experiencing this unprecedented mental health challenge. 1 in 4 of us will deal with mental illness in one way or another, whether it's a family member or a friend or a neighbor or yourself. And so now is really the time to act, and I really stress that. And we're all here today for one purpose, along critical leaders and those making contributions in the space to launch a united campaign for mental health. And together, this united global effort will increase global advocacy, campaigning, and financing for mental health throughout the world. So we'll discuss that a little bit in this first panel.
As a bit of an overview of what this event is going to look like today, our first segment is going to engage with political leadership, both at home and abroad, about what's already happening on the ground. Our second segment brings together leaders and people with lived experience to discuss solutions and what needs to happen next. In between those two, we're going to hear from Alicia London, the CEO of this initiative, who's going to speak a little bit about some personal reflections on an event like this. And then finally, at the end, we're going to invite some interventions from the floor to speak to what we've heard today. Right now, I am so honored on behalf of this event to introduce 2 very special videos that were made for you folks here to hear. The first one that we'll hear is from the Secretary General, and the second is from Her Majesty Queen Mathilde of Belgium.
Challenge of utmost importance for the well-being of people and for our efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Health encompasses both physical and mental well-being. Yet for too long, mental health has been mostly an afterthought, despite its overwhelming impacts on individuals and communities. 1 in 5 young people will experience a mental health-related problem this year. Millions of people are caught up in deeply traumatizing conflict and disasters. The 2030 agenda is clear. We must leave no one behind. Yet, those struggling with mental health problems are still being marginalized. Healthy societies require greater integration of mental health into broader systems under the umbrella of universal health coverage. Next month, I will launch the United Nations Staff Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy, so we can do everything possible to care for the people who deliver the work of the UN, sometimes in very difficult circumstances. I look forward to strengthening our shared work to promote mental health for everyone, everywhere. Thank you.
For several years, I have been advocating to put mental health higher on the international agenda. And this has not been easy, as the taboo and stigma are still strong and adequate care is often not available. Mental health issues are even today one of the most neglected aspects of good health and global well-being. There is an urgent need for improvement in mental health care and the prevention of mental illness. It is one of the most critical global health challenges of our time, a challenge that all countries share. Mental illness puts a huge human and economic burden, not only on individuals, but also on families, communities, and on whole societies. Yet it is often the invisible problem in international development. Dealing with mental health issues should be incorporated into any international development strategy, in the same way that other health issues are. Some individuals and vulnerable groups in society are at great risk of mental disorders. Women, children, and the elderly are particularly vulnerable. So are people exposed to conflict or to natural disasters and other humanitarian challenges. We need to integrate mental health strategies into our broader strategies for building resilience among vulnerable people. I am confident that today's event will contribute to greater awareness of the impact of mental health on our daily life and on the implementation of Agenda 2030 in general. Good mental health is an essential condition for development, and it is indispensable to the achievement of many of the individual development goals. The fight against poverty, for example, access to quality education and decent work, the reduction of inequalities, and the continuation of economic growth, to name just a few. There is no good health without good mental health. This issue concerns all of us, everywhere, and it is one that requires an innovative response with respect for the dignity of the individual.
Can you hear me? Yes. All right. Thank you, speakers, for joining us. This panel is about how political leadership at home and abroad on mental health is critical, feasible, and happening. And we're inviting these speakers to share their perspectives. I do have to say that we're very tight on time and hope that all of you will keep to schedule and excuse me in advance if I have to interrupt over you. So thank you very much. Raghu, I'll turn it over to you to intro.
Thank you. So very excited to be on this panel here with such amazing speakers. I'd like to invite Ms. Jeanette Petipa-Taylor. She's the Minister of Health for the Government of Canada to say a few words. Canada has been at the forefront of mental health for many, many years now and has shown great leadership on this issue. So I'm excited to hear.
Well, thank you so much. First and foremost, good afternoon, everyone. It really warms my heart to be here, speak to all of you with a room full of allies when it comes to mental health. I would like to thank United for Global Mental Health, as well as Bahrain, Belgium, and the Netherlands and Ecuador for co-sponsoring this event. This is truly a historic moment, the first time that mental health is in the spotlight at the United Nations, and it would not have been possible without strong leadership at the highest level. I would like to congratulate Secretary General Guterres for supporting this event. I would also like to thank a friend of mine, also the incredible Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros. Dr. Tedros is a true champion of mental health, both here at the UN General Assembly and in all aspects of the WHO's work. We are truly lucky to have him. I'm pleased that mental health is getting the attention that it finally deserves, because it's an issue that's truly near and dear to my heart. That's because that I'm not a career politician. Before running for office 4 years ago, I spent 3 decades, and now I'm feeling old, being a frontline social worker. My very first job was a mental health counselor. In my years of experience in the field, I was able to see firsthand how much progress we've made. Conversations that once took place in hushed voices are now front and center, like today. Watching just how far we've come is a pertinent reminder of the importance of fighting stigma. We would never tell someone that they need to just get over it if they suffered from cancer. So why do we tell them that if they're suffering from mental health issues, depression, post-traumatic stress injury, or suicidal thoughts? Having been consumed with issues of mental health my entire career, from my very first job to my current one, I feel extremely privileged to have the position that I'm in now. As Canada's Health Minister, I'm determined to keep mental health at the top of the agenda, and I'm proud to be of a government that shares my passion. Mental illness plays a role in some of the most challenging public health issues we face, from the tragedy of suicide to the battle of substance use disorder. Yet, these issues are hardly unique to Canada. In fact, I find it rather ironic that people rarely think of mental illness as a matter of global health, because in my mind, it's the most global of them all. Mental illness affects every single nation on earth, rich, poor, northern, southern, industrialized, or agricultural. It doesn't matter. And I think that it's important that we recognize this, because as history shows, by working together, we can make previously unimaginable progress. We took important steps on this journey this past May at the World Health Assembly. I was proud to join my colleagues from Australia and the United Kingdom in launching the Alliance of Champions for Mental Health and Wellbeing. This bold initiative will unite nations towards making meaningful progress on mental health, doing more than any one country can do alone. And I would like to invite ministers from all around the world to join us to help raise awareness, to foster political will towards action on mental health. Yet, to make a lasting difference, we must cast our net beyond government. We must, and I stress must, engage everyone, from healthcare workers to business sector to civil society. One example is my government's close collaboration with the Canadian Mental Health Association, or as I refer to them, CMHA, one of our partners with us today and a leader on the issues for over 100 years. I'm probably a little bit biased because they were the first, CMHA was the first who gave me my first job when I was a frontline social worker. So partnerships like these allow government to direct their resources where they actually make a difference. One initiative that I'm particularly proud involves Canada's Indigenous people. For years, Canadian governments have overlooked their health, particularly mental health. Yet our government is determined to change that. As our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, there is no relationship more important for the Government of Canada than that with Indigenous peoples. And so we're putting our money where our mouth is. In 2017, we committed an additional $200 million for First Nation and Inuit mental wellness services. This starts with better access to mental health professionals and traditional healers. It also means quadrupling the number of mental wellness teams that serve remote communities across Canada and establishing Hope for Wellness Helpline, a hotline available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, providing counseling and services in 5 languages. Of course, we all know that no one investment or idea can solve the complex issue of mental illness. I invite you all to think back 100 years ago. Polio crippled the lives of many, while smallpox claimed hundreds of millions of victims. Yet over the past century, the world came together with common purpose. We worked hard, we worked together, and today these killers are but a memory. Let's all begin now. so that in 100 years we can say the very same about mental illness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Jeanette. We appreciate your comments. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Tedros, my friend, and Director General of the World Health Organization to discuss how mental health fits within the NCD and the UHC agenda. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Excellencies, ministers lined up here, I'm really proud. Excellencies, colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a great honor to be here today for this very important event. And my special thanks goes to my sister Cynthia and the Born This Way Foundation for your commitment and leadership, and also to the Alliance of Champions for Mental Health and Well-Being. Let me tell you about a friend of mine, a doctor actually in Ethiopia, who struggled with a mental health condition and was ostracized by his family. Caring for mental health actually starts at the family level. From my experience, this doctor, he himself was a doctor, because of his mental health problem, when that strikes, he was a bit violent, and his family couldn't understand him. And because of his violence, they didn't want to even allow him to come home. And a doctor, a psychiatrist, said to the family, please understand your son. His violence is not deliberate. That's his illness. It's like diabetes, or it's like any other illness. And unless you understand him, nobody can understand him. I remember that psychiatrist actually saying to his family to convince them to understand that mental health is like any other illness. But the psychiatrist couldn't be understood. And that's why I always say stigma starts actually from home. The stigma is very rampant in our societies. And that's one of the major problems. But not only in the family and society, a stigma in our institutions. I was interviewing one psychiatrist who wanted to be hired by WHO, and I was impressed by something she told me. She said, as soon as I graduated, I was assigned in a hospital with 3,000 beds. This is a mental health hospital or institution, and that treats the patients actually as criminals. And she said, that changed my life. This is more than 30 years ago. And that changed her views about mental health. And then she became advocate of mainstreaming mental health services in all health institutions and addressing the stigma in the health system itself. So when stigma is rampant in the health system, is rampant in the society, and it starts from the family, I think the fight is hard. And we have to be really prepared to fight hard. And there should be a sustained fight, a movement that can address all these challenges. And that's why we say now, because of the less emphasis we give to mental health, there is no health without mental health. That's how we should understand it. And WHO's own constitution describes health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But the reality is that mental health is often forgotten and ignored in public health planning. Every year, an estimated 800,000 people lose their lives to suicide. The recent suicides of several celebrities has brought attention to the fact that this is a tragedy for thousands of people whose names don't make headlines. Millions that we don't know about. 1 in 4 of us will have to deal with a mental health condition at some point in our lives. If you're not directly affected, someone you love will be. Suicide is the second largest cause of death among adolescents and young adults. But in many countries, people with mental health conditions either do not receive any services or languish in custodial mental hospitals, and this must stop. The human rights of people with mental health conditions are very often abused and discrimination is rife, as I told you in my own experience. This must be eradicated. Low and middle income countries often spend less than 1% of their health budget on mental health, which is completely inadequate to provide any meaningful services, and this must increase. In 2013, the World Health Assembly adopted a mental health action plan, and although we have made some gains, progress is inadequate because of the lack of funding. WHO's new 5-year strategic plan includes mental health as one of 5 platforms that we will prioritize to achieve better health and well-being for everyone, everywhere. To achieve that, it's vital that mental health services are included in benefit packages as part of universal health coverage. Nobody should be denied access to mental health services because she or he is poor or lives in a remote place. Tomorrow's high-level meeting on non-communicable diseases is an important moment for raising the profile of mental health. Instead of the 4x4 of our 4 NCDs and 4 risk factors, we have now added a mental health to make it 5x5. And I'm glad to tell you that our Secretary General is also with us, a great champion, and I think we will have a sustained and strong fight, which we can win. That's important because the risk factors for NCDs such as diet, alcohol, physical activity, and tobacco use are all influenced by a person's mental health, which is the 5x5. Better mental health can therefore have a knock-on effect that reduces the burden of other NCDs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with 3 areas in which we're calling on all countries to take action. First, countries must increase spending on mental health services that respect human rights. If there is political commitment, it can be translated into action when we're committed to also increase our resources or increase our spending. Second, countries must include mental health services in benefit packages as part of the journey towards universal health coverage. And third, countries must include measures to address mental health as part of their response to NCDs. Thank you all for your commitment. WHO is encouraged by the unprecedented attention the world is paying to mental health, and we're with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros, for your support and for prioritizing this unprecedented issue. Raghu, I will turn over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. So next I'd like to introduce Ms. Sigrid Kaag. I did not say that properly, I'm sure. She's the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Corporation from the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Thank you very much, and let me reiterate also my thanks to our Canadian and Belgian co-sponsors, Kingdom of Bahrain, but all of us to be here in, I think, a global partnership, and indeed, as Dr. Tedros said, a movement. And I think it's the movement that will keep us dynamic, engaged, and inclusive. I am motivated for 2 reasons. One of them is personal. I grew up living with a relative with severe mental health issues, depression. So I know what it looks like. I know what it is to live with someone, but I also know the immense pain and suffering of the individual concerned. And this was in the 1970s, a time when, even in the West, mental health issues were not spoken of, and certainly one did not want to discuss them. Secondly, in my work, I've traveled a lot in crisis countries, conflict-affected areas, where certainly access to mental health care, even speaking of, in cultures that are ridden still with stigma, where the mental health of the person is the last of one's concern, so to speak, because physical survival is the highest priority. This has motivated me to include in our development policy mental health in crisis situations, to enable conditions of access, to provide support, to invest in capacity building, and in a way heed the call of Queen Mathilde of Belgium, the Kingdom of Belgium, to really mainstream this in everything we do, because indeed we will not achieve the SDGs, and we will marginalize those who've already been affected and afflicted by conflict even further if we disregard the acute, urgent need for mental health care and support in a way that the whole of the person can flourish and the soul can heal. Now, in a way, I have managed to summarize most of my points. So let me tell you and reiterate what we will do as the Netherlands, because I think we are a community of the convinced and converted, but more importantly, we are convinced of what we'll do and why we are here. We would like to sponsor and partner with all of you as the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the years ahead to build an alliance of countries within the global mental health movement for those activists and actors and partners to work on access to mental health, quality mental health, support, build the infrastructure in crisis situations, people affected by conflict, be they refugees, be they migrants or host communities. This for us is our official priority in everything we will do in the field of health, in addition, of course, to sexual reproductive health and rights. But this is something we are known for, amongst others, through She Decides. But mental health is new to us. We would like to scale up the services. We want to pioneer with you innovative ways of achieving barriers. Access, physical access, can be no excuse to not provide access to mental health for people in conflict zones. It is the same as access to food. It is different, but it is mental nourishment and encouragement and support. We would also like to look better at the ways that staff and volunteers can be supported. I believe the Secretary General has already spearheaded it for UN staff. All humanitarian workers and staff need to be guided, supported, and have a way to go. I remember one situation in a conflict zone where the teacher, whose own house was destroyed, her husband had been severely injured, had to get up to go to a school building that no longer existed. And she said, how can I even reach out to the children who are traumatized, fearful, have lost relatives, if I am not whole as a person? So this is as important as our overall programming. We will launch and formalize our initiative together with WHO and ICRC and other partners in the months ahead. And I look forward to seeing you in equal numbers, if not more, globally, virtually, and in the Netherlands, because the moment is now. We have a lot of work to do, but it can be done and it must be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing the update of what you've been up to and how we can get involved.
Thank you again, Minister Skog. I think this alliance of countries is so important. It will take all of us to build the momentum. And I would just like to thank Dr. Tedros once again for his time and support today. He has to leave us, and thank you very much for being here.
I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me.
Please join us. Our next speaker is Maggie de Block, Minister of Health for Belgium. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I want to highlight two important steps we took in Belgium to accomplish accessible mental health care. Firstly, we wanted to focus on early detection and primary mental health care. A lot of you know the pyramid of care of the WHO. The bottom of the pyramid, which shows the base of your system, should provide accessible primary and community mental health care. The top should be specialized healthcare accessible for those who need it. Well, in Belgium for several years, the pyramid has been less upside down. So we have plenty of specialized residential care that is reimbursed, but there was no reimbursement at all in primary care. And after being a family doctor for more than 25 years, becoming Minister of Health in Belgium, I certainly wanted to change that, and I did. After more than 20 years of discussion, we finally succeeded in 2015 to provide a license to practice for clinical psychologists. Following this, we immediately took the initiative to reimburse treatments by clinical psychologists in the primary care from 2019 onwards. The second structural reform we had in Belgium was the introduction of mental health in all policies. In the beginning of my term as minister, we were flooded by calls for help from citizens and professionals to report a child in a crisis situation. The message was more or less always like this. The crisis was unforeseen, at night, at weekends, at holidays. We did everything we could. We called everyone we knew, but nobody could help us, and there was a place nowhere. So the frustration was huge with everyone involved. But we knew that there was not a lack of expertise nor enough will to help. We created networks in every province with a clear point of contact in times of crisis. This network brings together all the care facilities, hospitals, ambulance care, general practitioners, but also schools, sport and youth organizations. This makes a huge difference for patients and professionals because every actor in a child's life has a role to play. We see that when we eliminate the silos of care and coordinate the care better, we do find solutions and they are also sustainable. So I conclude, I'm delighted to hear and see that we are all working together, raising the profile of mental health, and I would like to thank you all for your interest and also my colleagues here for their interesting contributions to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister de Blok, for your efforts.
Thank you. It's really refreshing to hear of so many of you with frontline experiences now in critical positions of leadership making change. And therefore, we have Dr. Espinosa Serrano, the Minister of Public Health from Ecuador, to share her views.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all the sponsors and co-sponsors of this event, and especially all of you who have taken some time from your schedules to be here with us, and that will surely multiply our vision and our hopes to act on global mental health back home in all of the regions of this world. Now I'm going to switch to Spanish to try the translators. And also for the diversity of the languages. Quisiera empezar con volver a un caso y recordar a muchos de nosotros nuestros antecedentes clínicos, médicos. Quisiera hacer referencia al típico estudio de un caso y voy a hablarles de Juan, un niño de 14 años que falleció. Juan tiene, como les dije, 14 años y no tuvo una complicación prenatal. Su madre accedió a todos los servicios durante su embarazo sin ninguna. Tuvo todas sus vacunas a lo largo de su vida, tuvo controles mensuales durante su primer año, no tuvo ningún problema alimenticio ni ningún tipo de desorden que pudiese ser reportado en su historia clínica. Su tamaño y su peso eran adecuados para su edad. Creo que tenemos problemas con la traducción.
Sorry, you need to select the Spanish language on the screen.
Vamos a darle un nuevo intento, ¿ok? Muy bien. Estaba haciendo referencia al estudio típico de un caso clínico en el que muchos de nosotros estamos acostumbrados a recibir. Juan es un niño de 14 años que falleció. No tenía ningún antecedente familiar ni personal, Durante el embarazo, su madre hizo todos sus controles prenatales y no tuvo ninguna complicación. Él recibió todas sus vacunas, sus controles mensuales durante su primer año de vida, su peso y talla eran adecuados para su edad. No tenía antecedentes personales ni familiares. Iba regularmente a su médico de familia, el cual estaba disponible en su comunidad. Cuando tenía algún problema menor, podía servirse de los establecimientos de salud que tenía a su disposición. Y sin embargo, Juan murió con una sobredosis de la droga llamada H, luego de tener un desorden bipolar nunca diagnosticado y más de un año de crisis y ansiedad. Él no tuvo información sobre su enfermedad, murió sin conocer siquiera que la padecía. No existía una línea 800 a la cual llamar. Ninguno de los doctores a los que asistió le preguntaron nunca si tenía algún síntoma o alguna señal de riesgo. Nadie en su escuela tuvo información ni sabía cómo ayudarlo o a quién llamar. Su familia nuevamente no conocía sobre la existencia de los problemas de salud mental ni cómo ayudarlo. No existían programas comunitarios ni servicios para que los jóvenes puedan encontrar un proyecto de vida o recreación o deporte. De hecho, la mayoría de su entorno no tuvo la oportunidad siquiera de ayudarlo. Se quedó fuera del sistema de salud. Los sistemas le fallaron. Me encantaría que esta historia fuera inventada, que no fuese real, que no fuera la historia de cientos, de miles de niños y de adolescentes en nuestros países y en el mundo entero. Y sin embargo, todos nosotros nos hemos comprometido con el acceso y la cobertura universal para la salud. Me han pedido que hable de la relación entre ese gran compromiso que hicimos los países del acceso y la cobertura universal en la salud y la salud mental. Y quisiera decir que no existe una posibilidad alguna de que alcancemos la meta de la cobertura y el acceso universal si no contemplamos a la salud mental. La salud mental es una parte comprensiva del derecho a la salud. Sin embargo, a lo largo de la historia ha sido una parte olvidada, una parte dejada a un lado, por muchas razones, por el estigma, por el miedo, muchas de las razones que bien han sido mencionadas por las colegas que me antecedieron, pero sobre todo por la falta de reconocimiento de que tenemos un problema. Y ese problema es que no hemos colocado la salud mental en el tope de nuestras prioridades. En la mayoría de nuestros países, este es un tema que no es parte de nuestras políticas públicas regulares. Es un problema al cual no le hemos asignado recursos ni financiamiento. Es un problema que no cuenta con respaldo político y que no cuenta con suficientes voces reclamando por el mismo. Quiero señalar nada más 3 razones adicionales por las cuales en la región de las Américas, en la agenda de salud,
we have engaged with mental health, and it's one of the main priorities in order to break this circle, and so we should be able to take care of this problematic of health. There are 3 reasons only of several of them. The mental health actually affect everybody, children, teenagers, adults, elder people. There are no populations that are not suffering. 30% of these teenagers suffer of that. The toxic stress has a lot to do with the cognitive development and their future. Second reason, we know very little about health problems. Research is scarce. The more research, the more and we know that we don't know much about the behavior of the human beings or the role of communities. And the third is that it's worse.
Mental health. Apaga tu micrófono, porfa.
Y el soporte.
The mental health problems become worse.
en las zonas más.
Mental health becomes worse with the problems we face in cities with globalized problems where community loses more and more space. These are only 3 of the reasons that we have to act right now and to understand that we will not be able to meet the objective of universal coverage and access if we leave the mental health component, which is not lesser or less important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Serrano. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but thank you for highlighting the importance for the need for political support and really including mental health into the greater health coverage agenda.
Our final speaker is His Excellency Dr. Walid Khalifa Al-Manea, Undersecretary of the Ministry of Health for the Kingdom of Bahrain. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cynthia, for the introduction. Thank you. Your Excellencies, honorable guests, it's really actually both my privilege and a pleasure to be representing the Kingdom of Bahrain as a co-sponsor of this important event alongside Canada, Belgium, and Netherlands and Ecuador in order to raise the profile of mental health and ensure that far more action is taken to address this global challenge that affects everyone. I welcome the opportunity today to talk about mental health given our strong commitment to this important issue. In Bahrain, we believe that mental health is critical because it is one of the NCDs. Secondly, it could contribute as a factor for other NCDs. And third, it's really an outcome of other NCDs. I'm just talking about like a dilemma for a mental health problem now. But this is actually the real. So the value of it is just like that. And if you consider management of a patient coming to a physician, we found in some of our studies that 60% of our management have to be related to mental health problems. Taking history, 60% of it have to be, again, changed to mental health problems. Examination and screening for mental health problems, and even management. You will struggle with a patient coming again and again with the same problem, and he don't have simply compliance for the medication. Because of the other concerns, it's not the medical one or the physical one which you are talking about. Actually, in Bahrain, we have very well-established primary health care system with a highly trained physicians, nurses, and really dedicated professionals that can address mental health conditions. So our approach is more focused on prevention and early detection, which is reflected in our strategic plan, where one of the major objectives is integrating mental health into primary care setting. This helps facilitate the patient or a patient-centric and holistic approach. It also promotes human rights, reduce stigma, increases productivity, lowers the economic costs across the board, and it's crucial for sustainable development. Bahrain has made great strides in scaling up mental health services in primary health care. Though mainly 2 programs, I just will mention about them, which is the first one is mental health services in schools, especially given the large percentage of youth in our population, and the clinics that focus on mental health at a primary care center. On mental health services in school, Bahrain launched in the year 2000. We started at that time the National School Health Program, which focuses on all aspects of health, physical and mental well-being, including mental health promotion and prevention. In 2007, after 7 years, Bahrain established mental health clinics in schools. A specialized team from both Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education was allocated to provide these critical services to all areas in Bahrain. And the second thing, as for the clinics that focus on mental health at primary health care centers, the Ministry of Health adopted a significant strategic goal at the primary care level entitled Towards Better Mental Health, and that was in 2009. So we initiated actually a mental health committee at the primary healthcare level, which was formed at that time. And the first clinic that focuses on mental health was established to cover a few areas in Bahrain. This has expanded rapidly since then. There are now 8 regional clinics. Bahrain is a very small country, actually. We are about 1.2 million, so don't be amazed about the number. That's 8 is more than enough for our country. And the health centers, and they cover referrals from all areas in Bahrain, with approximately 2,800 patients will visit per year. Although we have made notable progress, we recognize that still have a long way to go. Some of our challenges we are looking to tackle are raise more awarenesses across all age groups on this issue, the challenge, the stigma associated with it, especially with the culture which we have it there in our country, and focus more on community-level approaches. In closing, let me reiterate that the Kingdom of Bahrain is committed to mental health and well-being. We look forward to working closely together with all of you to improve mental health across the globe. Well, I do like, Dr. today say that no health without mental health, and we could use that, let us say, as a target or as a goal for us to work for the coming few years. I would like to thank all of the co-sponsors of this event for their tireless work on this issue and highlight the effort of the group of friends of mental health and well-being that our permanent mission here in New York is involved in alongside the permanent mission of Canada and Belgium to raise more awarenesses of this issue at the United Nations. I think this small group could be expanded and more larger to have involved all the globe together tackling this very important problem. Thank you, indeed.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers for providing us such great insight into the great work that's being done across the world and such promising interventions. So can we just get one more round of applause for all the speakers?
I would like to thank all of you again for joining us and being with us. We've heard from everyone the need to really increase the priority, our funding, and our response to break down the barriers around mental health. So thank you again for your contributions.
I'm Assistant Director General for Non-Communicable Diseases and Mental Health.
It's my pleasure to meet you so much. Yes. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you.
For being here.
As they're adjourning, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Alicia London, who is CEO of United for Global Mental Health, which is officially launching this week. Congratulations on that milestone, and thank you for being here, Alicia.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, honorable guests, and ladies and gentlemen, as we've heard from all of our speakers so far, we're facing an unprecedented challenge on mental health. We all have the right to mental health, both physical and mental. Yet for too long, mental health has been overlooked and underfunded. Mental health conditions have a significant impact on people's lives, on families, communities, and economies. And it really is an issue, as we've heard so many times today, that affects everyone, everywhere. Globally, we face issues of stigma, marginalization, and human rights abuses. As we've heard, 1 in 4 of us, including myself, have suffered or will suffer from a mental health condition, and the vast majority have no access to treatment or support, with the highest burden being in lower middle-income countries, where 75% of cases occur. And a great many will lose their lives. If you were handed a rose today coming in, if I may, I'd like to ask you to just hold it up in the air. These are 135 roses. 135 because during the course of today's event, 135 people will lose their lives to suicide. That's 1 every 40 seconds. Thank you. It is time we act on mental health. We must bridge the gaps in awareness, education, research, training, and treatment. and most importantly, uphold the rights, human rights of those that are suffering. There's so much to do, and I'm so heartened to hear the level of unity that's coming around this room today. And that's why we're so thrilled to be launching today, United for Global Mental Health. Our goal is that by 2030, everyone, everywhere, can turn to someone who is able to help support their mental health when needed. In 2013, I suffered a trauma and was diagnosed with PTSD and chronic depression. It took me years to recover, and I couldn't have done it without the support of a friend, Alana, here today, wonderful medical support, and supportive communities. This goal of having everyone to have someone to turn to is what we need. It could be a friend, a family member, a colleague, a teacher, a medical professional if needed, a trained person face-to-face or over technology to speak to. So how are we going to do this? We're focused on three things. Firstly, campaigning, led by those who know mental health better than anyone, those of us who've experienced or live with it daily and want to support others to live life to the full, collectively raising our voices to call for even greater action. Secondly, advocacy. We'll be advocating for greater implementation of what is working and more evidence for what else works. And thirdly, global financing, to enable this vision to become a reality. The global funding for mental health, I found to be shockingly small, literally flatlining across the bottom of a graph. If we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to invest in the world's greatest resources to make this happen, and that is its people. All governments must put it at the top of their agenda and integrate mental health right across all areas of public life. Funders need to step in and bridge this gap, massive gap in global financing. Businesses need to be promoting and supporting the mental health of their staff, supply chains, and their impact in the world. And every single one of us must challenge the way we think, must be there for one another, and campaign for change. And the good news is there are so many organizations all around the world doing this right now. We've collected stories from around the world you'll see on your tables and you'll find online that demonstrate things that are working. These are the things that need to be scaled up. I'm about to show you a film shortly, and before I do, I just wanted to say if you wanted to put your earphones in, you'll be able to hear it a little more clearly. And so before we move to our next panel, it's my absolute delight to share one of these stories that inspires me every day. It's about a friendship bench, an innovative, high-impact, low-cost initiative born in Zimbabwe by psychiatrist Dixon Chibanda. It trains someone we all love, grandmothers, to be that person that others can turn to in their times of need. This novel idea is being adopted all around the world, including right here in New York City. And while this video is playing, I'd like to invite the next panel to come and join. Thank you very much.
The meaning of the song is this: I am amazed with the great work of your hands that you have done for me. Whom shall I tell what is troubling my heart?
I welcome you at this friendship bench where we help each other by talking.
I just think if I commit suicide, I will rest because I've got many problems. Because I'm not okay, things are hard. My husband died. No one look after me. Now, as I'm telling you, my kids are at home. No school fees, no food, nothing.
If you want to cry, you can cry. Here, you are free to tell all what is troubling you.
It saved my life to begin with. Like I would have been dead by now. Secondly, I've learned to accept life as it is. These women, they are old and wise, and they have got past experiences in life. And I don't know, there is this magic about the old women, you know. I get along very well with them.
How are you, madam? I'm okay.
Yeah, okay now.
Yeah, it seems so.
Yeah, very strong these days.
Yeah. I'm now a changed man. Since it begins with me. Sure. So the change also begins with me. Yeah, I'm living the change. Do you still remember what you have said? You told me that I'm a precious gift of God. Thank you, Miss Shikore. I'm now a responsible man. I'm now a responsible citizen. Yeah. We have done it. I'm now a responsible father. We have done it. So, what do you think?
Dinosha miswa kwazo namaba samakuru akayu. That's my potential. I just want to sing this music. I'm an artist.
If you close another book, there's another book which will be opened. So today we've opened a new page. So Rosemary, I wish you all the happiness.
Thank you, Alicia, for sharing that reflection with us and for sharing such an incredibly beautiful video. This next panel is going to seek to answer the question, what next? What needs to happen to accelerate greater action on mental health that delivers impacts for real people? And I'll remind our panelists once again that we are a little crunched on time, so please be aware of that.
Thank you very much, Emma. And I will make that even a little more tight, that maybe two minutes or so for your comments, please. Thank you. Welcome, Tim Evans. It's a pleasure to meet you. Tim is the Senior Director of Health, Nutrition, and Population at the World Bank. Tim, the big question, how can countries increase finance for mental health?
Great. Well, thanks very much, and thank you to the leadership here for uniting around this issue. It's absolutely inspirational, and we're delighted to be part of it. There are a couple of things that I think are critical for mobilizing the resources necessary. First is to build demand in countries to invest in people and recognize that people are the greatest asset to a country's future growth and ability to navigate and negotiate whatever lies ahead. And we know that's going to be rocky in many places and at different times. But if you have people that are educated and healthy and in good mental health, then your ability to navigate that tough path forward for your country as a whole is going to be much better. We say that not only in terms of what we believe, but the evidence behind that shows countries that have higher levels of health and education, higher levels of human capital, are actually more effective at growing and growing more quickly and inclusively. So building that demand and recognizing amongst heads of state and ministers of finance that good mental health is not something that should be taken care of in prisons and penitentiaries, but as actually an opportunity for societies to do much better and to thrive. The Minister of Finance from Canada, Bill Morneau, who used to be running a major placement agency for workers in Canada, said the biggest constraint to keeping workers on the job was mental-related health. And so I think this recognition that this is important to society's thriving is critical. Secondly, it's not just about the health sector. It's an all-of-society opportunity. And if you think across the life course, for example, with respect to the workplace or the benches of the village, those aren't clinics. And that's really taking health to the people and making sure that you tap resources fully. Third is getting beyond stigma and making connections that we need to make. So we know we have globally a huge problem of stunting. About 23% of children in the world are short for height. They're stunted. And we know that that affects their educational and their employment achievement opportunities in life. And we also know, but we don't talk about one of the most important risk factors for childhood stunting, which shows up across all societies, which is maternal depression. And when we talk about doing something about nutrition, we don't talk about doing something about maternal depression. We talk about breastfeeding. We talk about vitamin A. But we really need to begin to embrace something that's a universal risk factor and figure out how we can address maternal depression much more systematically. Another area is the area of crises. I heard Sigrid Kaag from the Netherlands talk about how important it is. And anybody who's lived in crises and all sorts of different crises, from conflict to the Ebola crisis, I was just in DRC, knows that there's tremendous trauma associated with those people that are affected, displaced, abused, mistreated. And what we're doing systematically across all our crisis response now is looking at how we can more effectively integrate counseling, post-traumatic stress opportunities, attention to populations that are adversely and very vulnerable in those settings, and make that part of the billion-dollar response in crisis financing such that it is friendly and inclusive of those suffering from mental illness. So I think those are some of the areas that we're actively moving on. I'll finish by simply saying we have a lot to learn. And if anybody thinks that we've got this all figured out, we are fooling ourselves. So one is the commitment, but two is the commitment to learning how we have a tremendous challenge ahead of ourselves, which relates to logistics, people, information, new innovative interventions that we can take to scale. And I think if we collectively come together, then by 2030 we can really make true on this promise of being united for global mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. People, our greatest assets. Love that.
I'm so excited to introduce Sitawa Wafulu, an incredible advocate from Kenya. Sitawa, in the work that you do, what are the greatest challenges for accelerating action on mental health?
I'd say some of the challenges include the fact that people with lived experience are not seen as assets in the service provision. So they're seen at times as illnesses as opposed to assets. They're seen as statistics. I think everyone here has said 1 in 4. I am Sitawa. I am not one. I am Sitawa. And for those of you I say that because I have lived with mental health diagnosis. Just a quick background, I was sexually assaulted when I was in my late teenage years, and unchecked trauma from that was given a mental health diagnosis. I didn't know where to go to get information and support, and so I started a support platform from in my country, Kenya, which became a space where many other people who were looking for mental health information and didn't know where to go, who to talk to, were able to get that sort of support. And from that, we not only were able to start a support line that helped over 25,000 people, but also started a mentorship program where people like myself who are assets have been able to gain skills and resources to be able to provide mental health services where they're at. So when we think about financing, when we think about scaling up, we also need to look at the people who are going through these challenges and their caregivers, because they're also usually left out of the conversations as assets in the conversation and not just as people who need that support or who need that help. So when we look at 1 in every 4, let us remember that we're looking at actual people, assets in the movement.
Thanks, Satawa, just for really reminding us why it's so important to personalize this issue.
Thank you for your bravery to tell your story. I'd like to ask Shekhar Saxena, professor of Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health, to share some insights about the contribution of the upcoming Lancet report and its significance for the future of mental health.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. 3 years ago, the world leaders assembled here in the UN and included mental health and well-being in the Sustainable Development Agenda. It was for the mental health community to translate that political commitment into real action, and 28 of us were invited by the Lancet to write a Lancet Commission on Mental Health and Sustainable Development. And we worked for 2 years to produce this report, which will be launched on 10th of October in London. I'm here to give you a taste of what is coming. And I'm pleased to be here to answer some of the questions that have been posed actually by some of the ministers earlier and also by Tim here as to what do we know and what do we need to know. These 2 years have been spent in synthesizing the knowledge as to how to really fulfill the aspirations of the world leaders in mental health and well-being. A few key messages. 1, integration of mental health within the Sustainable Development Agenda is urgently needed, fully justified on scientific and moral grounds, and is ready to be implemented. We have the knowledge. We need to learn how to implement it well in a diverse situations that we have in the world. Mental health is about all of us and not only about people who have a mental disorder. So I would like to actually paraphrase what my colleague was saying here. She's not one. In fact, all of us need to be involved in mental health. So there is no room for recognizing between people who have a disorder and people who don't, because many of us will be at risk of disorder or will look after somebody in our family or community who has a mental disorder. It's about all of us. The third key message is that it's truly a global issue. It involves all countries, rich and poor, small and large. It's truly a global issue because when it comes to mental health, all countries are developing countries. None of them have got it right. We all need to learn. Effective interventions for promoting mental health, preventing disorders, and facilitating recovery are available and are affordable. We need to apply that. Specialists are needed. They're very useful, but a lot can be done by non-specialists. And that's a message which some of the countries who have less human resources need to fully recognize, that a lot can be done by general doctors, general nurses, and also by healthcare workers.
We have just a very brief wrap-up.
One more message?
Yes.
Okay. Technology needs to be harnessed. Technology has made large improvements and advancements, and that can be extremely useful for delivering care and also for monitoring the situation within countries. And the last point was about investment, which Tim has already answered. Investments need to be increased, but the utilization of the investments that are being made have to be made more efficient. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My final question is for Craig Makabar, Deputy to the Assistant Secretary General of the New York Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Craig, with your work on human rights, how are you approaching mental health?
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, for us, this is just a part of the human experience. Mental health issues are a part of the human experience, but unfortunately a part of the human experience that's been dogged by imposed indignities and human rights violations really for centuries. And it's really good to see this room so full of people who are committed and convinced to this issue, because this is an indication of how much more attention the issue is getting these days, and it presents really for us a historic opportunity to finally, maybe for the first time in history, to actually get this right. But we think to do so, we need to make sure it's done based upon a human rights-based paradigm for mental health. And we have really, I think, one overriding message as we move forward, and that really is a call for vigilance to ensure that all of this new attention, all of these new developments do not compromise the agency and voices and human rights of persons with psychosocial disabilities as set out in international human rights law, including the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The truth is that today the human rights approach to mental health is being challenged, even by some within the global mental health community, who still question the human rights standards that are applicable here, and still, with all good intentions, push for more narrow, let's say, medical-based responses, to increased attention to promote mental health through a very narrow lens that would limit our analysis to a medical question and to medical responses. That needs to be addressed, but even more worryingly for us from a human rights perspective is measures that would limit the autonomy of persons with psychosocial disabilities, including involuntary treatment, involuntary placement. These are again being proposed in many quarters in direct contradiction to international human rights norms. And all too often, the voices of the affected persons, of the rights holders, are being neglected or excluded from the discussions. This absolutely has to be corrected, just as you see in this room, and my congratulations to the organizers, a rejection of approach that does not include the voices of the rights holders. But we also have to make sure that there is no backsliding in substance. This is the 21st century. It calls for 21st century approaches to mental health. So we have to insist on a human rights-based approach that's focused on dignity, on equality, on empowerment, on autonomy, and on the freedom of the human person, rather than on archaic approaches that focus on involuntary placement, forced medical treatment, pharmacotherapy, and coercion. And we have to support human rights compliant, including CRPD compliant approaches to mental health that place the human rights voice and participation of persons with psychosocial disabilities and the representative organizations at the heart of all of the actions that all of us take. Luckily, we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to guide us. It takes a strictly non-discriminatory approach to the rights of persons with disabilities, including persons with psychosocial disabilities, persons with intellectual disabilities, autistic persons, persons with dementia, and others. This includes, to finish here, the right to legal capacity, the right to health, encompassing the right to free and informed consent, the right to liberty and security of the person that we all must enjoy, and the right to live independently and to be included in the community. So, co-facilitators, this has been the consistent message of our own advocacy at the UN Human Rights Office, but also that of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Health, the Special Rapporteur on Disabilities, and a range of stakeholders have been participating in our own consultations. We hope it will be recorded as a message from today's discussion as well. It is time to act in support of mental health and time to act for the human rights of the entire human family. Thank you.
Thank you very much to this distinguished panel of speakers. And now we're going to take a few interventions from the floor.
Hello.
I'd like to first ask Ambassador Toshiya Hoshino, Deputy Permanent Representative of Japan, for his short intervention.
Thank you very much. Yes. Well, thank you very much for inviting The Prime Minister Abe is here yesterday and talked about how important Japan values that the universal health coverage, and he emphasized that the discussion should go on. So we should go on, and we'll have a G20 summit next year and TCAT for Africa. I strongly believe that the mental health issue is a peace and security issue as well as the economic, social, and individual issues. So peace without inner peace, we cannot complete peace. And human security challenge we have to go through. And in that regard, mental health is very important. The time is now, and we should go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Patrick Smith, who's CEO of Canadian Mental Health Association.
Hi, and thank you. And I just wanted to acknowledge from the National Canadian Mental Health Association the unprecedented federal leadership that we've seen in our government in Canada, and really heartened to see the colleagues around the world joining together. We believe we're celebrating 100 years of community mental health leadership, and we believe that mental health is perhaps the core issue that truly can unite global citizens. Crosses parties, crosses borders and boundaries, and people of the world can come together not only to increase and enhance services and supports for people with lived experience with mental illness, but also, equally importantly, mental health promotion for all, meaning healthy schools, mentally healthy promoting schools, workplaces, campuses, and communities. And one of the things that the Canadian Mental Health Association has done recently is released a paper, Mental Health and the Balance, Ending the Healthcare Disparity in Canada. It's not just in Canada, and it's taking a lead from people like the Honourable Norman Lamb in the UK, the parity of esteem legislation. So one of the things I want to leave us thinking about is what is the potential role for parity legislation internationally that can actually help all countries come together so that mental health and mental illness are funded equally and on par with, commensurate with burden of illness and on par with physical illness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And now we would like to ask Patricia Danzy, Regional Director for Africa, Director General, International Committee of Red Cross. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Maybe some words on conflict and violence. We heard it from the Netherlands, we heard it from other participants, but of course in times of conflict, when people have to flee, when you uproot it, when you lose the anchor that holds you together mentally, that holds you together as a person, this is all over, and it's very, very difficult to handle. When you have people that are displaced, you also have people that displace them. When we talk about the fighters, we have a lot of programs, UN programs and others, of integrating fighters back into their communities. These fighters have killed. Some have been taken in very young age. So what do we do? And I have never seen any mental health program for fighters really, really well done so that they can overcome it and that they become very useful for their communities again. So the focus on victims is very good. It's needed. It's needed in conflict. It's also needed the one that are the perpetrators so that you can bring it together. You also need the first responders like me and many others in the room. We see in the eyes of the people, we saw the pictures, what it is, we see the emptiness, and we sometimes feel very helpless about it. We also see the pictures that people draw, that we hope that our children never do this. And when we ask about the response, often it's local. We saw it at the bench. It's a local Red Cross, the local Red Crescent. It's communities that hold it together. So we have to invest in them. So there comes my 3 asks to you here. Invest in local actors. Language-wise, community-wise, they're close. So we need to support them. Invest in the health system, that we not only have 2 psychologists in a country, and donors like the Netherlands and others. Ask the right questions, integrate it into your plans, and commit long-term. It's not a 1-year plan, it's long-term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And also to Judy Kuriansky, who is Director of Psychology and Coalition.
The history of how this all came, because this is a historic event. It started in this room on that monumental day in 2015 when the governments, member states of the world, agreed to the final document of the Sustainable Development Goals. And in it were these 5 words: promote mental health and well-being. That is why we're here. And it's so astounding. That was the result of Goal 17, a partnership, a tremendous partnership between a lot of the psychologists in this room, part of the Psychology Coalition of NGOs accredited at the UN, finding the champion, which I was delighted to lead, finding the champion partner who was Ambassador Otto, Caleb Otto of Palau, and getting the countries to agree that this was important as poverty, that this was at the heart, mental health is at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals, related to poverty, peace, as was said, related to the empowerment of women and girls. We also started the group of friends now with Bahrain, thank you, Minister, and with Canada, and also with Belgium, and with great support from Ambassador Lois Young sitting here from Belize. And so we are so delighted that we are here because of all of that, creating mental health as the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals, as Ambassador Otto said. And when those governments agreed, they stood up, everybody in the room, all of us in civil society stood up, and we hugged each other. So as we end this, I can suggest we stand up and we hug each other.
Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy week to be here. There's so much progress being made, more to follow. The time is now. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. This is a little bit different of a view than we normally have of the Fox News headquarters in New York City. Anybody ever been there? I know I've walked by. 2011, it's been a long time though. Just talking with a coworker here at Fox 10 Phoenix about how I got to get back out to New York City sometime soon. I promised you all bear cam, so unless anything else breaks, we'll be returning to Alaska here in just a moment. here. Good evening, everyone. Just want to give you a heads up. You're only going to be able to see one of two of my News Now hits for Fox 10 Extra News at 7. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Again, I'm not ignoring you. I will probably be ending the stream early, though, and that's because I will be here bright and early, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Not just covering for Mike, but for the Kavanaugh hearing. Again, the stream starts at 7 o'clock. So I'll be cutting the stream a little bit early. right, everyone. We are preparing for Fox 10 Extra News at 7. If you're in Arizona, you can watch on Channel 45, Cable 9. If you aren't, you can watch on fox10phoenix.com/live. Take a look at this bear eating this sockeye salmon. Hope you're having a fabulous evening. Friendly reminder, we have already created the Kavanaugh stream. Starts at 7 a.m. Arizona time tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. I keep sending out the link on the YouTube chat. Link, link, link. Share, share, share. Please, please, please. Also, for the everyday, the faithful viewers that watch News Now, couple stories to get you caught up with, or news, I guess. I'm filling in for Mike Thursday, Friday, Monday. Again, Thursday, Friday, Monday. Please help our viewership numbers stay high. Really appreciate that. Continue to watch. And then next week, I'm going on vacay. And I promise to return to you all. All right. right. Well, I have a minute to say hello and talk to you. Hello. Hope you're having a fabulous day. Pilar Arias here with ya. Okay, so technically three important news things from tonight. First, you'll only be able to see one of my live hits from Fox 10 Extra News at 7. That means the stream will be ending early, this current stream that you're watching. 2, we already have the Kavanaugh stream ready to go. There's very few people, but there's still some people waiting for it. I've sent out the link time and time again on the YouTube chat, so go ahead and take a look there. Click on it. It'll take you right to the stream. I'm going to launch that tonight before leaving the station, so you guys will be able to chat overnight and build up the audience. Share that link. Please, please, please. 3, starting tomorrow, I'm filling in for Mike Thursday, Friday, Monday. And then I did share some other news too, but the regulars can share that with everybody else. Okay, so we got it. Only one Fox 10 Extra News at 7 live. How now, brown cow? Only one Fox 10 Extra News at 7 live hit here from the News Now set. 2, this stream will be ending early, but the Kavanaugh stream will be launched prior to me leaving the station tonight. And 3, starting tomorrow, I'm filling in for Mike for 3 days, so I hope to see you all again. All right, I think everybody's all caught up. All right, everyone, I'm coming up on TV. Mama Bear checking in. Hope you're having a great evening. This will be the only News Now hit for Fox 10 Extra News at 7 you'll be able to see. I am recording, so you'll see what it's like on television, and then I'm going to end this stream and start the Kavanaugh stream in a little bit. So just a heads up to everybody so you know what's going on. Ron Hoon is supposed to be back tomorrow, as far as I know. I'll be here for Mike, though, Thursday, Friday, Monday. Absolutely. Let's show you both the video. This happening in Cajon Pass in California. A brush fire burning shut down a portion of the 15 freeway. A big rig went off the side of the 15 freeway near Kenwood Avenue, for those familiar with the area, and ignited a brush fire on the west side of the highway. No structures were threatened, but all lanes of the 15 freeway were closed in the area. And Mark, just like you said, traffic is normally very bad out there regardless. So something like this happens and it just creates a huge traffic headache for a lot of drivers. Going to switch on to some other news now that we've been covering for several days. 5 days into the search for 6-year-old Maddox Rich in North Carolina, and there are still no signs of the little boy. 67 additional investigators and agents have joined the search. The 6-year-old disappeared after running away from his father at a park Saturday in Gaston County. He has autism and is described as being nonverbal. Maddox's father, Ian Rich, addressed a crowd of reporters today, shedding light on the day his son disappeared. According to 911 tapes, though, it took about an hour until a park employee called for police. Let's listen to his father.
Oh, it's torture. It's torture. I just want my little boy back home. I want to know he's safe. I want to give him a big hug. As soon as I see him, I want to give him a big hug. And I just want to know he's safe.
Officials are asking for a man in a pickup truck and a jogger who they say were in the park that day to come forward. They say they're not in trouble, but it's possible they may hold information that can better piece the timeline together. The FBI is now offering a $10,000 reward for information that will help them find Maddox. So lots of people out there in North Carolina keeping a very close eye out. Back to you. All right, I'm going to show you how that looked on television. Didn't go exactly as planned, but that's A-okay. And then I'm going to cut this stream, everybody. Hope you're having a fabulous night.
Fox News Now. It's time for that part of the show. Now they stream events all throughout the day from everywhere.
Yeah, Pilar area is busy today. Joining us now from the News Now set. And Pilar, there was a brush fire in Los Angeles that shut down a highway earlier today. Traffic is a nightmare no matter what in Los Angeles. You add this into the mix, it's a real headache.
Absolutely. Let's show you both the video. This happening in Cajon Pass in California. A brush fire burning shut down a portion of the 15 freeway. A big rig went off the side of the 15 freeway near Kenwood Avenue, for those familiar with the area, and ignited a brush fire on the west side of the highway. No structures were threatened, but all lanes of the 15 freeway were closed in the area. And Mark, just like you said, traffic is normally very bad out there regardless. So something like this happens and it just creates a huge traffic headache for a lot of drivers. Going to switch on to some other news now that we've been covering for several days. 5 days into the search for 6-year-old Maddox Rich in North Carolina, and there are still no signs of the little boy. 67 additional investigators and agents have joined the search. The 6-year-old disappeared after running away from his father at a park Saturday in Gaston County. He has autism and is described as being nonverbal. Maddox's father, Ian Rich, addressed a crowd of reporters today, shedding light on the day his son disappeared. According to 911 tapes, though, it took about an hour until a park employee called for police. Let's listen to his father.
Oh, it's torture. It's torture. I just want my little boy back home. I want to know he's safe. I want to give him a big hug. As soon as I see him, I want to give him a big hug. And I just want to know he's safe.
Officials are asking for a man in a pickup truck and a jogger who they say were in the park that day to come forward. They say they're not in trouble, but it's possible they may hold information that can better piece the timeline together. The FBI is now offering a $10,000 reward for information that will help them find Maddox. So lots of people out there in North Carolina keeping a very close eye out. Back to you.
Pilar, thank you.
Taking you out live to this very cool picture here for just a few seconds prior to me ending the stream. Again, you are watching News Now, a part of Fox10Phoenix.com. We are not done. In a little bit, I will be launching the Kavanaugh hearing stream, and I will be here bright and early tomorrow with you all. Take care.